Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hayes' Higher Learning. I'm your host, Ashley Hayes, and this week we are talking about communicating in the midst of a pandemic. I don't know about y'all, but I have been having some really intense conversations through this. Not to mention Mercury in retrograde and that full moon have brought folks out the literal woodwork, but I'll get to that in a second. What I've noticed is that people are communicating and reaching out a lot, whether it be for human connection, for resolving conflicts or debates. Sometimes those are friendly debates, sometimes they're unfriendly. And I wanted to recap some of the principles we talked about in seasons 1 and 2 and how we interact with each other. For me, I have been rumbling, as Brene Brown describes it in Dare to Lead, with quite a few issues, and I've been in the paint with people closest to me. My roommate and I spent about a week just discussing this new normal of us both being home and not traveling the way that we're used to. That meant setting new expectations, new boundaries, and figuring out new agreements. That also meant apologizing when we hurt each other or broke an agreement and being accountable for how we show up in this space. That meant considering each other when we're making meals or when we bring new things into the house. And that also meant dealing with the unpleasant emotions that change can bring, such as resentment. Like for me, sometimes I resent the process of having to do something differently, but I work through that. And I also have been experiencing grief during this pandemic. I've been grieving the big shift in my business, been grieving not being able to travel and commune with folks like I'm used to. And I've also been grieving being romantically single during a pandemic. So I've been using quite a bit of energy just to manage that grief and not let it overflow into the other areas of my life. And I do that by feeling what I feel and reminding myself to control the controllables and to be happy where I am and with what I have. I've also had to lean into tough conversations with my family. My youngest brother, as I've mentioned in a previous episode, has autism and he recently graduated from high school. So now we're tasked with figuring out a new normal and understanding what it takes to care for an adult with autism who's nonverbal. I've been talking to my mom about planning our future as a family and really having candid conversations about life insurance and her wishes for when she transitions. In my family, those conversations are usually brief if they happen at all. And I didn't find out until after my father passed that his life insurance had lapsed. And that was an extremely sobering experience for me. So it becomes extremely important to me to plan for major transitions and to approach them in love and not fear. I know that we live in cultures that have a fear of death and don't want to talk about it and just want to, kind of leave things to the breeze. But I want to be intentional about how us as Black folks approach transitions and how we plan and how we figure out our key players. I think opening up those lines of conversation are so important in the context of revolution. And I plan to talk about this more in future episodes. Maybe I'll even invite an attorney or an insurance agent to talk to us about life and wealth planning, specifically for Black folks. I've also been rumbling and reckoning with men who I have been in relationship with previously. In my very first episode of this podcast, I discussed a traumatic breakup that happened in 2018. Y'all, 2 years later, that person has reached out to apologize for what happened and to be accountable for the ways in which he harmed me. And I was finally able to reconcile what my role was and to take responsibility for the ways in which I had also hurt him. I think that all the work I've done has led me to this point, to a place where I can look at my past, acknowledge what happened, have compassion for who I was at the time, and also have compassion for him. I'd already done the forgiveness work, so I wasn't waiting on him to show up and have this grand moment. But I think it is certainly a revolutionary act when Black folks can hold space for each other and witness the hurt that we've caused each other. And I think that's how we heal, by facing our past and not running from it. And I've done the work necessary to release him and that relationship. So it felt good to hear it, but to also know that I'm so happy where I am and to be at peace and to also just wish him well. I wish him a life of love. I've also been out here setting boundaries and asking for what I need in personal relationships. As I mentioned before, I was in a relationship with someone and they ghosted me and then they asked for my friendship again. And watching Insecure honestly helped me understand that it is possible to start a new friendship after something like that happens, but only when that person is honest about what happened and accountable. And if you haven't watched this season, there's a storyline where Issa gets ghosted by a guy named Nathan, and he comes back and he's honest. He says, I had bipolar and I thought that was the best that I could do. And he shows up as a friend later on to help her with the big project. And I think that's the depiction of grace and reconciling I want to see more of. Like, yeah, it can be fuck him and the ship he rode in on. That's valid. But if that person is showing you something different and you have room for it, I say give it a try. I have also learned not to be ashamed of giving grace to people. Honestly, I have spent some time processing shame. People say things to me like, you a better one than me because I wouldn't talk to him again. And, I begin to second guess myself and my capacity to keep myself safe. But I am so confident in my new tools, and I do trust myself to keep a safe distance with people and to hold them accountable at various points in a relationship. I'm so grateful always for the opportunity to try again and to try to do things differently. I've also been seeing some really intense dialogue around like Black Lives Matter, holding companies accountable, and reform in the midst of the pandemic. And people have a lot of angst and anger, and I see it so often show up in the comment section in social media, on Twitter, on Facebook. And as you are talking and debating and educating, I really, really encourage you all to prioritize love. It is so easy to let anger drive and to forget that the person you're talking to is also a human and they're deserving of safety and understanding. And yes, hold people accountable and be clear about your demands. Yes, combat gaslighting with presenting facts and evidence, but do not exhaust yourself on people who do not want to see your humanity. I see folks turning up the heat instead of just walking away. Remember, you can be angry and hurt, but you don't have to be pressed. Stop being so attached to people behaving differently. Assume that they won't and do what you need to do to keep your peace. I think every relationship that I have been able to renew, I've been able to do that by walking away from the table and then coming back at the right time, which is after I've done some healing and some introspection. And I've learned to control the controllables and do the work that is yours to do. I think that is how we move towards love and how we move towards peace and just our everyday interactions with each other. Now, the government is a different story. The government has a lot of work to do before they can even consider us being nice to them. But we've talked about that in episode 1 and episode 2 of this season. I talked with Denver Terrence about social justice and what that meant. So just understand who the villain really is. Understand that we are seeking abolition. We are seeking the destructions of systems that keep people marginalized. So when you're talking to someone who looks like you, and again, Angela Davis said, I don't want to be in unity with everybody who looks like me. I think that's valid, but at least see them as a human being deserving of respect. Thank y'all so much for showing up every week and sharing the podcast. This podcast is a spiritual practice for me, and it means a lot to be vulnerable in my process here. I'm excited because next week I'll be in conversation with Pam Iverson about Black love in the midst of revolution. If you haven't heard Pam before, she joined us in season 2 for He's Just Not That Into You episode, and I highly recommend checking that out. As always, you can check me out online. I'm at Hayes' Higher Learning on Instagram, ashleyhayes.com, and you can check out the Hayes' Higher Learning tab there. And I want to encourage you all to check out my Patreon page. Patreon is a sustainable way for artists to engage our audience and to generate revenue. And so for as low as $5 a month, you can help sustain Hayes' Higher Learning. And there are some cool incentives at the $17 level or higher, including free haiku, a Hydrate Moisturize Mind Your Business shirt, or FaceTime critique sessions with me. You can write your poems and I can look at them and give you feedback on them. So check it out. That's patreon.com/Ashley Hayes. And feel free to leave me a message at the Anchor app anchor.fm/Ashley-Hayes. Remember to check me out at Ashley Hayes Instagram. I host a writing workshop on Instagram every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and I'll be doing this until the end of July. I'll take a break in August, and then I plan on coming back in the fall. And my song of the week, and possibly my song of the summer, y'all, I've played this song probably 100 times in a week since I first heard it, and I'm really kind of sad that I just heard it a week ago, but here we are. And that song is I Want You Around by Snow Allegra. Thank you all so much for tuning into Hayes' Higher Learning, where together we are learning better, doing better, and being better. I hope you all have a wonderful week.